Hey folks, I recently watched a series of videos made by a YouTube channel called Intheblues, and those of you who surf all the guitar channels will probably know who I'm talking about. The first series in this video was top 5 quality guitar brands with horrible resale value. That got so far has 393,000 hits. So I know some of you will have watched it. He did a part 2, top 5 quality guitars with horrible resale value. And then followed up a month ago, these were 9 months ago, followed up a month ago with a positive video, top 6 guitars with amazing resale value. So he must have been asked, well, you know, what has good resale value? You're giving us all the ones that don't. And having gone through this, it's interesting. He knows his stuff. I think it's an informative video. Well done. Seems like a conscientious YouTuber. But really, having looked at his examples, it really just falls into philosophy that I've been saying ever since I started my channel. Basically, people are brand snobs. Guitarists are the worst brand snobs in the world, and this is kind of behind his findings in these 3 videos. So I'm not going to give you all the brands that have no horrible resale value. Remember, these are quality. These are what he considers to be good guitars that you just can't flip. You can't make any money on them. A couple of things to say about this. All of the guitars, or most of the guitars that he lists in this category, are not your top 4, 5, 6 brand guitars. They're not your Fender acoustics. They're not your actually, these are all electrics, so they're not your Fender electrics, your Gibson electrics, your PRS, that kind of stuff. All of the guitars that he comes up with are sort of up-and-coming second-tier brand guitars, like Schecter, like Fernandez, like Reverend, those types of guitars. And you know, basically, you know, you buy a Reverend guitar, the cheapest you can find one, even on eBay, $500 or $600. And he's saying, his point is, you can't get more than that. You can't then resell it and make money on it. It doesn't appreciate like the classic guitars do. There are 1 or 2 exceptions. He does pull out a couple of models of the higher brands of guitars, but 90% of what he's saying are these mid-range, up-and-coming, new, even guitars like Chapman, which people brought up in the comments. You know, you pay, how much you pay for them is all you can get for them if you resell them. You can't buy these guitars and then resell them for more. They don't appreciate. And I think that ties into what I've been saying about brand consciousness. I find guitar guys, particularly your old-timers, their knowledge is one, sort of out of date, but also very condensed. They really do believe that the world has made 4 or 5 top brand guitars and everything else is fluff. And if it ain't a Gibson, a Guild, a Martin, a Taylor, a Fender, or a PRS, it's not in that top tier. And those are the guitars that will appreciate in time because everybody's after them. But these other guitars that people are making, very, very good guitars, are just not commanding you know, any increase in the market. They're not appreciating at any noticeable rate anyway. And then of course the top 6 guitars with amazing resale value, I should say. On the cover of the video he's holding you know, a Gibson Les Paul. So that gives you an indication that, of course, the guitars that tend to command appreciate fast are these top echelon brands, the brands that we've been indoctrinated to think are the best. Now, whatever your personal opinion on that is, it doesn't really affect the market. My personal opinion, as I've shared many times, is that Gibson has lost a lot in terms of their production and the quality of production. Fender has lost a lot, depending on which echelon of guitars you're going for. I'm more of an acoustic expert than I am an electric expert, and I can tell you that a lot of the Fender acoustic line is substandard. It's average or even below average. They have some nicer stuff you can pay for it, the Paramount series and things like that. The Redondo, the Sonoran, all those guitars are still desirable. But I'm talking about your student quality, your CD 40s, 60s, things like that. I don't think they're really any better than the competitions from Ibanez, Alvarez, even some lesser known brand stuff. Take this JB Player guitar that I picked up really cheap. It's as good as one of those SA60s Fenders, or even better. The wood's better anyway. That's just a quick case in point. But it's an interesting series of videos from Intheblues. I have reason to believe that he knows what he's talking about. He's done some research. He buys and sells, so he's kind of got a knack for what you can buy and flip and make money on, and what you just cannot make a profit on, even though it's a very, very, very good guitar. Part of that, I would also say, is the method by which you acquire these guitars. You take Recording King, for example, a very good guitar make, but if you go on eBay right now, you will find dozens of them going cheap that have problems. There's a whole network, at least 1 or 2, 3 sellers that are getting these as blams, as seconds, as damaged, and they're selling them off online. You don't find that with certain brands of guitars. You won't find that with Taylors. You won't find that with Reverend guitars. A lot of companies stop that. They don't want broken guitars flooding into the used market. They feel like it drives down the value of the guitar, and other companies just liquidate. They have no problem liquidating. So I think a lot of your ability to make money on guitars also has to do with how you buy them. I would say that most guitars you buy in a retail shop, you're not going to make any money on unless they're vintage, and they just automatically appreciate over time. The way that you're going to find a guitar for a steal and be able to resell it for a lot more is things like pawn shops, flea markets, garage sales, guitars that are broken, that need fixing, that need work, that need a new neck, that need a fret job. Those you can pick up cheap and get some value, but then you got to factor in your time and your work. You don't normally find, things like Chapmans and Reverends and Stingrays and things like that in those places. You just don't pick them up in those places. Those are the places you do find the old Fenders, the Gibsons, the Angelicos, things that you can find cheap and find some margin or be able to make some profit on them. So there's a lot of factors behind this idea that certain guitars appreciate and certain guitars don't. It doesn't mean that the guitars that don't appreciate aren't any good. There's a lot of good guitars in the 2 videos made by Intheblues. A lot of guitars that I've talked about on some of my videos for my channel. And he doesn't try to make the point that they're bad guitars. It's just he's making the point that if you buy them, you're not going to be able to sell them for more than you paid for. You might even make a loss. I think that's a lot to do with brand consciousness. I also think it has to do with how markets are controlled by certain guitar companies. And I also think it has to do with just availability. I mean, there are certain guitars that they made thousands and thousands and thousands in a run, and now they're knocking around. You can find them cheap. And there are other guitars, very small guitar companies, and I think this applies to companies like Reverend, that make a fraction of what Gibson puts out every year. Their guitar run, I think Chapman's guitar runs maybe in the hundreds or in the low thousands. I don't think they're cranking out the volume that some of the larger companies are cranking out. So obviously there's going to be less of them. The price meter doesn't shift as much. So anyway, those are just my thoughts. I thought it was an interesting topic. I don't know this YouTuber. I just stumbled onto his channel. It seems like he's got a lot of good support. I thought it was an interesting presentation. I'll put the information in the blurb below the video so that you can go and watch this and tell me what you think of it as well, and what your thoughts are on why some guitars appreciate and some don't. And is brand snobbery ever going to be a thing of the past? Are we going to get past it? Are people going to realize that there are not just 4 or 5 good guitar makers, there are actually hundreds? And just because you don't know about their markets doesn't mean that they're not there. I mean, I'm not even talking about all of the handcrafted, all the handmade boutique guitars at all. I've not even begun to talk about that market. I'm just talking about used guitar market and finding guitars that you can make a profit on. Anyway, that's my thought for today. I'll see you next time.